see it. All right, looks like we should be live. Cool.
Oh, and I did change the bitrate inside OBS so that it defaults to 1080p, but we're still not getting the option in YouTube. But like I said, that's probably an external problem.
Cool. So right now, are we just looping the intro?
Yeah.
Are we audible?
Yeah, I mean, they can hear us right now.
Cool. All right, let's go ahead and transition to video.
Okie dokie. Welcome to the live stream, all one of you at the moment.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to Super Jeremy World, and I'm really excited to have everybody on today. It's a brand new format and a brand new person to the channel. So you all know me, Jeremy, but this handsome fellow next to me is my younger brother, Aaron. So I'll let him introduce himself.
Hey, Blues Tech over here, mostly into doing Star Trek related videos, but I'm going to be branching out to tech related and tech review videos in the near future. I'm just really excited to do a live stream with my big brother. So here we are.
Cool. So we have a few topics today. I know the title card says retro games and tech, and that is retro games is my primary focus and tech is his primary focus. So we figure we'll meet somewhere in the middle and just kind of go where conversation takes us. But Aaron, you had I think we'll go ahead and just start with your first topic.
Oh, I just was thinking the other day about the the generational difference between gaming and how the new generation is starting out much different than I did. I mean, I don't know how you particularly started out gaming, but it astounds me that my son started gaming on a tablet when he was 2 years old, and then like within the year had graduated to the Xbox 360 and Xbox One playing Lego games, and now he's 6 years old and he is an avid Ark Survival Evolved player. That just astounds me. What's your experience been like with the kids?
Yeah, so with my kids, we've been maybe a little more conservative, I guess would be the right word to put. So like when our daughter was younger, so we've got two kids right now, and when my daughter was younger, we would occasionally get her on a device, but usually like really controlled, nothing online. When she was like 3 or 4, we recycled an old like iPhone and just loaded a bunch of like kids apps on there, like learning games and stuff. And so she was fairly young when she started using a touch screen. Right now my kids are 8 and 10 and 11 as of yesterday, sorry. And so they both have like a Kindle Fire that they play on, and parental controls, we just like try to set it, but there's so many different settings, kind of get lost in there. Gaming wise, aside from what they can find on the Kindle Fires, they're kind of playing the retro stuff we have around the house. So they get on the Nintendo, and the Wii primarily, but they really haven't had much exposure to anything else.
Yeah,
Um,
I haven't really figured out much of how I'm going to address the parental thing. With him being 6, like, he doesn't really know how to use the internet at this point. So, like, he pretty much only uses the things, like, on the computer, he only uses the things that we've shown him how to use. I mean, he has his own Discord account, but he's only able to talk to me and mom, so that's not a huge concern for us at the moment. Um, that being said, I was actually very impressed with Google's age security, if you want to call it that, because I set up an email account for him, um, because you need an email to register for stuff like Discord and whatnot. And when I put his birth date in, they were like, "You have to have a parent." An authorized of age parent who can monitor this account, and then once you did that, uh, it gives you full capability to restrict anything he does as long as he's signed into Chrome. So I found that really cool. Even so much that you can't actually watch YouTube unless you're 13 years old, I think. So like
okay.
it won't even load YouTube. You can only go to the kids YouTube. I don't remember what it's called, but you can't like type in. Yeah.
YouTube Kids.
But I was blown away at how good it was. I even specifically tried to go to some websites that he shouldn't be able to go to, and yeah, instant no. I mean, it would be easy enough for an adult to get around, but for a child who's 6, I was pretty impressed.
Yeah, we actually set up an email address for our daughter like when she was born. We went on and just registered the email in her name, just like basically her full name, so that she would have that Gmail account, set up for when she was old enough to manage it herself. Um, One thing recently we've had our kids start on, because it's available on the Kindle Fire, is like Facebook Messenger, so you can like set up Messenger for kids.
Yeah.
And so as parents, we have control, like we can download like every message and video that they send, and like monitor that way. And it's interesting the stuff that you have to kind of figure out with your kids on there, because like we got a message, we got an alert that our daughter had reported something on Messenger, and so it's like she'd had a message and she reported it to Facebook to say, hey, this was not okay. And so we got the alert and reviewed the report, and she had sent this report in on one of her friends, and we asked her about like, okay, what was this about? And she said, oh, well, she wasn't responding to my messages, so I reported her. So we got to have a nice lesson about what is this report feature for, and kind of letting her know, like, this isn't just getting back to her. We got alerted as your parents, her parents probably got alerted, like this went out to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it can be serious, but it was just kind of an interesting parenting moment there.
Yeah, it's certainly a different world now than when we were kids.
Yeah, so kind of get into what you were talking about, like how did you start gaming when you were a kid? For me, the earliest memories was having our Intellivision at home, and really watching Dad play, and then learning some of the simpler games like Reversi, where it's just a real simple like board game type thing. And then watching, kind of watching that for a bit, and then being able to play when he was at work. We'd learned enough to play it. I did a lot of solo play on there, and then played some with Sarah, our sister. And then eventually we got the Nintendo Entertainment System. I think that was about 1990 or 1991. And Grandma bought that for us too. She'd bought the Intellivision as well before I had any memory of it. It was there my whole life, from what I recalled. But I was actually talking to Dad about this the other day because I was curious. I knew Grandma had bought the Intellivision, and I was like, "Hey, so I know as kids we were dying for this Nintendo because it came out in '85." And so, I was talking to him and just asking, like, "Hey, so did you guys know? Like, did Grandma tell you she was buying the Nintendo for us?" And he was like, "No, we had no idea." I was like, nowadays
Wow.
that's a pretty big get. Like, if a grandparent bought one of our kids like a major console, I would be kind of upset about that, just if I didn't know that it
Yeah,
was
because
coming.
that's like, I mean, you can go almost $1,000 now on a console, like with all the accessories and whatnot. You're looking at like $700 to $900. So,
Yeah, that would be huge, right? It's a different world.
like, I mean, in some parts of the country, that's a really crappy car.
Or not too bad a one.
Yeah, that's a daily driver right there.
Yeah. So, that was my original experience. So, about the time I was 8 or 9, we finally picked up that Nintendo, and man, that NES was life. I played that thing for days. And just so many great memories. The games on there from the Mario Brothers series, The Legend of Zelda, um, the Ninja Turtle games, like the games that we had. We probably only had 15 or 20, but I played the heck out of every single one of them, whether they were good or not. And it's just a lot of fun. So what's funny is, like, I have such like nostalgic feelings about all sorts of video games from our childhood, but we really only had those two consoles when we were growing up. And I know you had others after I left home, but
Well, not really. I
not really.
I had to get others by various means. Like I had to borrow a PlayStation from a friend in order to try it, and like I bought the Xbox, the original Xbox, when I was out living with you for a summer. Um, like my earliest gaming experiences are pretty much the same as yours. I mean, starting with the Intellivision and the NES. I mean, I I think I got a Game Boy Advanced, the really ugly purple one, for Christmas one year. I think Grandma Kid bought me that. But besides that, like everything else, I had to end up getting on my own. When I really started getting into gaming was when I started building my first computers. Like I would find broken computers downstairs in the basement or computers we just didn't use anymore, and then I would tear them apart. And eventually it got to the point where I was asking people for used computers, like if they just weren't using them or whatnot. And I ended up building myself a successful computer so I could play games on. um, and I ended up playing like Jedi Knight Outcast or Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2 and games like that. And rest in peace, MSN Gaming Zone. uh, but I mean, that's how I really got my start as gaming. You did leave.
Yeah,
You left out the 386 DOS machine though.
I was just gonna say, you mentioned the building the computer, and that was a huge get. Like, so mom and dad had the 386 for the business, and they were like obsessed with us not touching it because we would break it, right? Um, so it was torture though, because dad had Populous on there, which was also a release on Super Nintendo, and we would watch him play on that, and I just love that game. So it was torture. But then I had a friend at school. I was in middle school at the time, and had a friend who said, "Hey, my dad's selling a computer," and so he had this old like 386. Well, it wasn't that old at the time, but he had a 386 that he was selling, and it had a bunch of games on it. And so convinced mom and dad to buy us that computer. It went into our bedroom and got to play. It had a bunch of classics. I know it had like Centipede and Pac-Man. Um,
Space
it had,
Invaders.
Space Invaders. I had like Where in Time is Carmen San Diego, which I loved, and I got like SimCity Classic on that thing. Um, but like you, the best way to learn is by doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's my favorite story about that computer and how like I really got into technology was kind of tinkering with that thing. And so one day I decided like, hey, this is somebody else's machine that we bought, and it has all these like weird files on it that we don't need, right? And so I'm going through and like deleting stuff that that is unnecessary. Okay. And I'm like, what, like 12?
Right.
Okay, so I'm going through and I find this file called auto exec,
Oh no.
and I was just like, what's this? It's an executable, okay, but like it doesn't do anything, so it doesn't start any programs that I like. So I deleted the thing, um, and then restarted it. Now, if you don't know what auto exec is, I'll teach you the lesson I learned that day. That is the program that tells your computer what to start up when it starts. So when it started back up, I got a nice blinky light that said, "What do you want to do?" And it did nothing. So I got this immediate tutorial in, what does an auto exec do? What does that program do? And how do you write one? Luckily, as I'm digging through the root directory, I find autoexec.old, and was able to take that and recreate, mostly the programs that did start up, and made the new .exe. So it was a really nice, like, on the ground in the trenches lesson. Like, A, don't screw around with stuff that you don't know what it is, and B, here's what autoexec.exe does.
Yeah, I guess
Um,
I guess by the time I got to tinkering inside of computers on a software-ish level, it was good enough that we actually had Windows at the time, and like it came down to a task manager. So I would just like, computer's running so slow. Same kind of deal as you. Computer's running so slow. I need to kill some of these processes, and by trial of elimination, by the computer shutting itself down when I ended the wrong one, I mentally came up with a list of proper services not to touch ever again. And that list is still mostly valid to this day, and I think I started learning that on like Windows 95 or something, or Windows 98.
yeah, there are certain ones you don't want to don't want to kick off there.
Yeah. I'm actually. I think it would be cool. I think we need to get Dad a really budget computer and get him playing the Age of Empires remake that's coming out soon. Because I never actually knew he was interested in Populous.
Oh yeah, it's like one of his favorite games. I mean, he played that thing for years, I want to say, because that computer traveled to a few of our houses. We moved a lot,
Yeah, we did.
but that computer, business computer, like he played it a lot because I watched him a lot. Um, and then funny thing about Populous, because I played the heck out of that game once I did get access to it. Um, and I found out later, like when I got into Xbox, I played the Fable series, and that was created by Peter Molyneux, and come to find out that he also created Populous, and so I found out like this guy has like created some of my like favorite games, and that was really cool to like make that connection.
Yeah, I can honestly trace back like 99% of my gaming lineage, as I call it, to Populous, because like from Populous I escalated to SimCity Classic, and then from that I escalated into games like Age of Empires and Civilization and stuff, and like RTS real time strategy is still just my favorite style of gameplay out of everything. And I mean, I've played everything from open world MMOs to just standalone RPGs to first person shooters, and RTS is still my favorite.
Yeah, the I don't know what it is exactly about Populous. Maybe it's just that you can like go around and like torture people, like sending earthquakes, like just this whole idea of like having the God mode, in a game where basically you can just go and screw around with people and cause floods and earthquakes and like and then like start Armageddon. Like that was the coolest thing when you knew you like had a bigger population than the enemy, and then you just click that Armageddon button and they just like battle it out to the death. Like it's just, I don't know, it was really satisfying.
Yeah, I bet it was. I haven't played it in such a long time, I can't even remember. I do think that Populous is on Good Old Games, though. I think.
Oh yeah, I've definitely got it on GOG. And I can't remember if they came over to Steam too, but I definitely have it over there on the one.
Yeah, I will have to try and get it because it would be interesting to do a retrospective on it. How does it hold up in 2020? Probably not very well, but hey, we'll try it anyways.
Yeah, and I know they had a Super Nintendo version of it, and so I might pick up that cart sometime and just see how it compares to the old DOS version.
I don't know, man. Like there have been some RTSs on consoles, like even new generation consoles, and it's just not right. Like you need a mouse and keyboard to do an
Yeah,
RTS right. Like
I will say that I am curious how they did the controller or the controls for that on a console, because that mouse was like such an integral part of the gameplay. Now I know the Super Nintendo actually had a mouse peripheral, but I doubt that it was active for the Populous game. So I
I
would be interested to check that out.
I would imagine they just mapped the D pad to a mouse cursor. Would be my guess.
Yeah, more than likely, and then you just have the different buttons for, because the biggest thing was you could raise or lower the terrain
Yeah.
very easily. I think with left click and right click or something like that. Um, so that'd be the biggest thing is all that time terraforming.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right, so we kind of covered games from our youth and how we got here. I guess the only thing I'll fill in is I have in my adulthood bought several consoles that I didn't have in my childhood. So right now I have currently I do have the Nintendo and the Intellivision, and then I also bought a Super Nintendo, and just in the last couple of weeks got the Sega Genesis. So that's been really fun to like finally dig into. And then of course we have the Nintendo Wii, and that's really our family. Like that's the one that the kids are allowed to play anything on it, and then the family, like that's the only thing that the whole family gets down to play.
right.
Um, and then of course I have my Xbox, so I've been a consistent Xbox owner. Bought the original Xbox, did 360, 360 Slim, and then now the Xbox One, and so that's where I am sitting right now.
Yeah. Um I haven't really bought any older consoles. I pretty much just bought them as they came out. Like I had every everything PlayStation wise up until the PS3. When the PS4 came out, I was so far off from caring about Sony and PlayStation anymore that it just didn't matter to me. The PlayStation 3 was great, and like they really did really well with it. Like the original fat PlayStation 3. And I was at the time a huge Xbox fan, so like I'm not even I think I'm pretty impartial when it comes to Sony in that regard, because at that time I was converted to PlayStation 3 because it was amazing, especially with being able to install your own operating system on it and everything. It was just an amazing console. And then like from a tech perspective, they took a complete 180 reversal on advancing themselves when they made the PS4. So I was pretty much done with them at that point. By way of the Microsoft franchise, yeah, I've owned all the Xboxes. Well, I mean, I never bought an Xbox One S or any of the subsequent models, but I have an original Xbox One, and I love it as much as you can love a modern console. It's kind of a love hate conversation, kind of like you in your last video you were talking about the guilt trip that consoles have you on.
Yeah, it's a tough thing, I think, because especially just I'm in a different place in my life, and I think that I've kept on buying the console. Like when I bought the original Xbox, I was just recently married, and like I was 1 or 2 years married at that point, and it was just Abby and I, and so it was much different time in my life where I could just I had a lot of time where I could just play, and she had her interests too, and so it wasn't a huge deal. And then I the 360 came out, and there was a significant step up to graphics. I felt like going to the 360. Ended up buying like a lot of the same titles. You had like continuations of like Call of Duty. Had more. I played a lot of Call of Duty. I love the Assassin's Creed series, and so I bought and continued to buy those new titles as they came out. And then kind of I bought the 360 Slim kind of on reflex. Just like, oh yeah, I knew that the original one had the fan and cooling issues, Red Ring of Death, all that stuff. So I was like, okay, I'll buy the Slim, nice little upgrade. And then when the Xbox One came out, it's like, oh yeah, I have to have it, So I bought it, and bought Call of Duty Ghosts. I think came out with that one, and then I can't remember if it was Assassin's Creed Black Flag or what was coming out right about that time, but kind of bought the new versions of the games, and still continued to buy like almost on impulse. Like, okay, I bought the new Call of Duty, bought the new Assassin's Creeds that come out after that. Tried, and I have several really enjoyable games that I've had on the console, but the amount of time I spend playing has diminished like by tenfold probably every time I buy a console. So
Yeah.
I could probably, I probably spent maybe I couldn't even name it, but it's just like a huge. I rarely play. Like if I look at the last time I picked up my Xbox controller and actually played, it's probably been more than a month, and maybe several months before that.
Right.
And so it's just become so far and few between that I'm finally kind of at the point where, with the Series X coming out, I'm probably not buying another one just because, like you said, you kind of have this feeling like if I'm trying to play during the day, it's like my wife and kids are like being ignored basically. And if I save it till the night, it's like there's such a small window there, that like, is this really where I want to put my time in? It's really not anymore. So I'm looking for more things that are family friendly. Like the Wii is such a great little console that the whole family can sit down and play. Like you said, that like it was Tommy Tallarico who said, we're not selling guilt with the new Amico console, and it's that idea is that it's being designed so that everybody in the family can just kind of sit down and play, and that's something that I really miss. And we still have it in the Wii, but that console is now 14 years old.
One thing on that note on that note of the video is I wouldn't say that the Amico is like filling a complete null void. Like, it is definitely adding to a very small area in that it'll be proper for everybody and you can just jump in and play with a bunch of people. Because as far as I know, now I've only played on it a handful of times, but the Nintendo Switch also kept almost virtually all of those multiplayer features as the Wii did. So I know that they have some of that space.
Yeah, and it's like you'll see little pockets of that, right? And I think in my video I even talked about like with the Xbox, we played Rock Band quite a bit. When we had the Xbox 360, we had the Rock Band games and Guitar Hero, and that was a different experience, where everybody would play. With, my brother-in-law would hop in, my wife would play, like anybody who came over, they'd pick up the microphone or they'd pick up the drumsticks. But you hand them the traditional like Xbox controller, and they look at you like, "What am I supposed to do with this?" And so I
Right.
think there's something missing from the mainstream. And again, you see some pockets of it. You'll have some party games on the Switch that will engage other people, but even like Animal Crossing, you hand somebody that, like there's a lot to learn to just pick up and play, right? And so that's what's
Yeah.
missing, is kind of that old like arcade style simple gameplay. Like that's what was kind of the magic of the Wii, is they shipped it with Wii Sports, and you have bowling, and who everybody will line up to swing the Wiimote and bowl. And so there is a gap there that has been largely left. And the other piece is with the Nintendo, is you can't always trust that your kids are going to be completely in a safe environment now, because everybody's got the online, and though there are like parental controls on the store, it's like, okay, my kids get around parental controls on like half the devices that they own. And so like it's this
Yeah.
constant battle of like, is there a way for them to get around it, and did they look over your shoulder when you typed in that code last time? um,
Hey,
so it's an interesting battle.
that's exactly how I got the password to the computer, mom and dad's computer at Tiffin, when it was in the downstairs room, the one down the hallway on the left.
Mhm.
I got the password by looking over mom's shoulder while she was typing it in. I never let on that I knew the password for years. I think she eventually found out, like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years later, but yeah,
Yeah,
kids are definitely innovative in how they get around security measures.
no kidding.
Uh,
All
so,
right. So let's okay, I'm gonna take a quick break. I'm gonna jump down to my quiz. Okay.
okay,
So it's a quick fire. I'm gonna list systems, and you tell me the first game that you think of for each one.
okay.
Okay. And folks who are in the chat, feel free to respond too. So we'll go quick fire. So you got to type in the name of the system and then the game that comes up. Okay. So first game you think of when you hear about Intellivision.
Oh, that's bump and jump for me, 100%.
Nice. Okay. So we got a bump and jump. That is an amazing game, by the way. One of my absolute favorites, probably tied with baseball. Okay. How about NES?
Probably Mario, but TMNT #1 would be a second close runner up.
Okay. Which Mario?
The first?
Okay. All right. That's totally fair. Mario, Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hand in hand when you say NES. Like,
It's true.
Mario built that console.
Yeah, built it and perfected it, I think, with Mario 3. That was Super Mario Brothers 3. That was an amazing game. Okay, DOS.
For DOS, it's always, I can't remember the name of the game, but it's always the monkeys throwing the bananas across the city at each other game, the 2-player game.
Oh, what was that called? I remember seeing that on the system. It was like some program in the QBasic program. It was just one of those on there. But yeah, they would toss the exploding bananas at each other across the town.
Yeah, yeah. That's the first one
Okay,
that always comes to mind.
if somebody knows the name of that one, let us know. Okay, Super Nintendo.
Super Nintendo. That would have to be Super Mario World.
Okay, yeah, that's a pretty good one to.
Again,
Okay,
Mario built Nintendo, not just the NES, but like all of Nintendo.
Okay, if you so you've had a pretty good solid pattern so far. So I think I know what you're gonna say to this one. Sega Genesis.
Sonic.
Okay, I was right.
I mean, a close second would be the Aladdin game because the Aladdin game on Sega Genesis was just amazing.
Yeah, I just got that, and you know I was. It's been interesting because I've been watching console wars since I have the Sega Genesis and I have the Super Nintendo, and there's a lot of crossover titles, and so I've been you know like okay, which system do I need to buy? Which version of this game do I buy? And so console wars is great because they have a whole series where they have the Sega guy and the SNES guy, and they kind of argue, but then they're doing a review of the games and tell you which one's better at the end. So it's really cool. But I bought Aladdin for the Sega Genesis, and the biggest difference that they had was he actually has a sword in that one, whereas in the Super Nintendo version he does not, which I find pretty lame, actually. But moving on.
Before you move on,
Yeah.
was Doom actually on DOS? Because I didn't get to play Doom until Windows. I think it was Windows 95 or 98 was the first time I played Doom.
Yeah, you know, I actually did not play Doom. I don't know, but we've got Chris in the chat is saying Doom was his answer for DOS.
Mm.
Uh, as I'll recap a few of his for original Nintendo was Ninja Turtles and Mario with Duck Hunt. And then for Super Nintendo, Super Mario World, and for Sega Genesis, The Lion King, and he'd forgotten about Aladdin, which it's so cool to have the Disney titles like actually be good. And I know they're it's just it's refreshing to go back and like have some things that came from movies actually be playable. So that's been kind of fun.
Yeah, you know, when your extra content actually matches the original content you made. It's how shocking, right? And the content was actually good and enjoyable for all ages and wasn't just shilling for I'm going on a rant, ignore me.
Okay, I've got three left. Nintendo 64.
Destruction Derby or Goldeneye.
Ooh, Destruction Derby. I actually have not heard of that one. But I also have pretty limited experience with the N64. I had a roommate in college who had one, but I still had my NES with me, so that's mostly what I played. Okay, PlayStation.
PlayStation. See, that one's hard because like I played so many things, so I just get like a stream of images for PlayStation. PlayStation original, I would have to go with Ridge Racer or you know, I don't know, Ridge Racer or something.
All right, Xbox original.
Original Xbox, Advent Rising or Advent Children or what was that game?
Advent Rising.
Advent Rising, yeah. Advent Rising, 100%. That game needs a remake. A remake or a continuation. Swear to God, like better than Halo, IMO.
Okay, I'm going to catch up a little bit from the chat. We had, is it Chris Tattoo, Super Smash Brothers, or Star Fox? And then Chris James T. Is that a reference to James T. Kirk? Sorry, that's probably your actual name. But I, of course, go there. Star Trek
Star
fan.
Trek.
Destruction Derby and WWF No Mercy. And then Independence Day. And I love hearing you and your dad played that for hours. I love family gaming, so that's awesome. Okay. And I'll run down mine real quick. So in television, I think okay, it is your actual name. Cool. So in television, I'll always think of World Championship Baseball first. Played that against everybody in my family and especially my dad quite a bit, and we still have arguments over who's the best.
I remember
NES,
that.
yeah. NES would have to be Ninja Turtles, the original. It's crazy hard, but it's also like it feels the most true. Like I love the soundtrack. I love like how close the turtles looked to the actual cartoon.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, uh, big Ninja Turtle fan. DOS, SimCity Classic, absolutely. Like I'll go there. Super Nintendo, probably same as Aaron. Super Mario World. Genesis, also Sonic, but that's largely because that's all I knew. Like I saw Sonic at my friend's house, and it was crazy fast and awesome.
It was also on the cover of the Genesis box for a while, if I remember correctly. So, I mean,
yeah, I mean they were smart when they switched to that as the pack-in for sure. N64 is this going to be an interesting one probably. Well, actually, it's kind of tied. Okay, I only played 2 games a lot on there. One was Mario Kart 64. Probably not a surprise. That's a really fun title.
it is.
The other one is 1080 snowboarding, which
wow.
I really enjoyed a lot.
I forgot about 1080 snowboarding.
That was the first snowboarding game I really loved. There were a couple on Xbox or 360 that were pretty good. But 1080, that was the first one that I just absolutely loved. PlayStation, I have to admit, I have never played. Can I say never? No, I think you and I might have played like NFL Blitz. Was that on PlayStation?
Yeah, holy crap! Yeah.
When I came back from college one time. But the game on there for me is Final Fantasy. You got to look at the Final Fantasy games.
Number 8.
Eight's the one. And though I never played it on PlayStation, I was always on PC. But that I appreciate the PlayStation had it. Original Xbox, I gotta go Knights of the Old Republic, Star Wars. That's my game right there.
Under other consoles, you left out the Nintendo GameCube.
Did I?
Was that intentional, maybe?
No, I don't know. So I know it's a beloved console. I've actually, that's one that I have never ever played. Like I can honestly say I've never played a GameCube. And so it's and have not worked that far forward yet. I kind of skipped to the Wii.
Yeah, you have a Wii. You didn't miss anything.
So so I know there's a lot of fun to be had on a GameCube. I just have not experienced that fun yet. So I do believe I've heard people talk about Smash Brothers on there though.
Yeah. Arguably, it was the best platform that Smash Brothers ever had. Like, if you really want to play Smash Brothers, you really got to have a GameCube controller, IMO.
Yeah. Okay, and then we had Chris Tazoo added in for DOS, Prince of Persia, which I've heard really good things about Prince of Persia, but I have never played. I've never played the game.
Yeah, I only had the opportunity to play GameCube a handful of times at a friend's house, and honestly, like, compared to the PlayStation at the time, I was not impressed. Like, Sony blew Nintendo out of the gaming water, in my opinion, on the PlayStation launch. Like, Nintendo and PlayStation should have stuck together for the PlayStation Super Nintendo combo that they were building, and like our gaming industry would be completely different right now.
Yeah, did you hear about how that went down?
I'm sure I have, but it's been so long.
Okay, I'll refresh you because I just watched this, and if you haven't watched this channel, go watch some Gaming Historian. He's amazing. Puts together some really great basic just history of video games. So he has a video specifically about the Nintendo PlayStation, 2 words. And if I'm remembering everything right, Nintendo and Sony were working together to create this PlayStation that would be CD media, and it was going to be their add-on. And they basically they went through all this, but then Nintendo was worried that Sony was going to go off and go their own way. And so they actually went and contracted with Sony's competitor Philips and made the Philips had Philips do their CD add-on, and then they actually like it was like at a huge press conference or like an E3 type thing. I can't even remember what the event was at the time, but they like announced this and debut this Philips thing like as a surprise when they still like had this agreement with Sony, and it was like a complete slap in the face. So Sony took the idea and said, "Okay, fine, we're launching the PlayStation ourselves." And then in exchange for doing the CD drive, Philips actually got the rights to use like Mario and Zelda, and I think a couple other properties that they got to create games for. And so there are some pretty crappy games out there under the Philips license with Mario and Zelda in them. So it's just a hilarious little thing. But basically, Nintendo created they created Sony's PlayStation. Like they're the ones who caused them to become like this huge video game juggernaut by like trying to go through Philips instead and double cross them.
I threw a picture of it up in the stream. The one of the original designs of the Sony or the Nintendo PlayStation, and
Nice.
I just love how it has a disc drive and a cartridge reader on the same console. That's just, what were they thinking? I mean, I get that it was a dev kit, so I understand. Like, but it's just weird.
Well, it's not that different from what Sega Genesis was doing. With so they ended up with like all these add-ons. So you have like the Sega CD and the 32X that would pop in the top, and all of this stuff. And so like you go on to like the Sega retro gaming like Facebook group and stuff, and people are comparing their towers because you can make these ridiculous towers of like games because you can start with the Sega CD on the bottom and then your console, and then you can have the 32X dropped in, and then I think like the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge is like a pass-through cartridge, and then they also have like the Game Genie, and so you can make this tower freakish tower console thing with all these add-ons. But the bottom line of that story was they had like again like incorporating the CD with the cartridge in the same console just as through add-ons instead of built in.
Yeah.
So reading back here, Chris James T played GameCube, but got it way after its life. Doesn't have much to say. He hasn't played it in a while. And then he had PS1, PS2, went to 360, and would have gone PS3, but was impatient waiting on a new console. Got the PS3, but was buying games for the same console, but really stuck with Xbox ever since. And I have nothing against PlayStation. I just I got Xbox, and this was like what 2005 or 2004, 2005. I'm walking through Best Buy, and I had not really had much interest in the current generation of consoles at the time. But I was walking through like a Best Buy, and they're on an end cap. They were showing like NCAA 2004, the football game, and it just like blew my mind because all I'd played was like NES football and stuff like that. And so to see like this pseudo realistic football game going on, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is freaking amazing. So like that was like when I fell in love with the console. It's like, okay, I'm getting an Xbox. And then I saw at Costco they had that set with the pack-in was like Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. And so I was just like, okay, there's an Xbox. It's got a Star Wars game. I'm totally taking that. And then I've just kind of stuck with it. I'm kind of the same way. Like I've had iPhone and Android, and I like both, but I've had iPhone more often. And so I tend to buy the new iPhones just because that's where I am. It's my environment. So anyway, yeah, that's where we are.
On the Star Wars note, the surprise topic for you.
Oh
um,
yeah, I was supposed to not scroll down past those notes, right?
did you not scroll down? So, Twitter Story Wars story heads respond to canon complaints is the title of this section. Matt Martin, who is Lucasfilm's story group creative executive, basically got into a Twitter war with the fans and basically said chill when it comes to canon. It's all fake anyways, so you can choose to accept whatever you want as part of the story. And I think this highlights I'm not a big Star Wars fan, so this is why I wanted to like get your real reaction to it, because like I can only look at it from a creative perspective. Like you can't say stuff like that when you're a creative head of a studio. Like there are certain things that are canon and there are certain things that aren't. If you don't have a solidified canon, in my opinion, then you're not respecting the actual creative product that you've made and that has been, consistently worked on for the last 40 years, right?
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing to come out and say. I actually I don't like the opening. So like you've got the tweet posted there. I don't like the initial like, hey, it's all fake anyway. It just sounds combative, like you're throwing it back at the fans, and I don't like that. However, I do get the rest of his point that you can choose to accept whatever you want as part of the story, and I do kind of support that. Like, there's a lot of extended universe stuff that people really like, and I know Disney, like when they took over, they kind of sliced off a whole bunch of stuff and said, "Look, this is no longer canon," and that I don't know, that kind of stuff just kind of bugs me a bit. And I get that they want to say, "Look, this is what's part of our current story," sure, but to say like this isn't Star Wars anymore, like I think there's got to be a fine line between, yeah, that's not part of this story, but it is still part of Star Wars. Um, the kind of bigger thing I'd like to uh, or I guess it's kind of similar topic on here is like a lot of people like to complain when like they don't like something that's come out. Okay, so there's a lot of backlash about Force Awakens and then Last Jedi, and then also what was the last one? Dang, my memory.
I don't
Uh,
know. Not the Star Wars fan. I'm on the other side
Man,
of the
okay.
the fence, and like I'm definitely one of those people, like because with Star Trek, because I'm super critical when it comes to Star Trek canon, because I'm sorry, Discovery is the biggest Star Trek pile of crap that the world has seen since Star Trek debuted, and there were some bad original series episodes. But I feel like uh, Discovery just turned Star Trek from being pretty subtly, for the most part, pretty subtly social justice warrior style, to being in your face, accept it now, you don't have a choice, bam. Like Star Trek's always been progressive, but it's never been accepted or die like Discovery was, and I found that really insulting, and a lot of other people did as well. So I can kind of feel the both sides of the scenario, like with this Star Wars thing. I can feel the creators' side where it doesn't really matter because it's all fake anyways. But at the same time, you have to have the respect for all that work that has been put in to the product that you're talking about, to the creative company.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I actually really enjoy Discovery, and I get what you're saying. I am a big Star Trek fan, though I will say I've never watched like the full like original series. It's just not the flavor of Star Trek that I enjoy. But I do love the recent movies that have come out, especially 2009 Star Trek. That's one of my favorite movies ever. Um, but I
2009
get
was great. I did not
yeah,
like the newest one. I think it was Star Trek Beyond or whatever. I think it just
yeah,
transformed into a pure action film at that point. Like it didn't feel like Star Trek at all.
yeah. I feel like they've had somewhat diminishing returns since the first one. So that was kind of the best in 2009, and then Into Darkness. It was pretty close, but it was kind of a step down. I felt.
Yeah, but
Um,
people didn't come to see Star Trek. They came to see what's his name? Khan. I can't remember who plays
Benedict
him.
Cumberbatch.
Yeah, they came to see him. They didn't come to see Star Trek. Um, one of my favorite things about Star Trek Beyond, the newest one, is the directors are quoted as it's the most cerebral of all the new movies. There was not one cerebral thing about that entire movie. I think they have their definitions confused. Like, cerebral means that it makes you think about things. Like, what would I do in this situation? That movie did none of that. And I'm like hypercritical when it comes to cerebral stuff because it's my jam. I love stuff that makes you think.
Yeah, yeah, I'm same way. I really like it when you really have to think, like figuring out the mystery, things like that. How did you like Picard? Have you watched that?
I've watched some of it. I have not gone all the way through it yet, but so far I've liked it. Um there are some things that I don't agree with. There are some things that I've read because I haven't seen it all, obviously, but some things that I've read that I already know that I don't like. However, it is miles better than Discovery was, so I will sit back, shut up, and count my blessings.
And that's an interesting thing though, because again, especially the Star Wars fan base, to flip back over there for a minute, it seems like the writers, the producers of the movies can't win, right? Because when you had J.J. Abrams did Force Awakens, you had so many complaints that, well, it's just a rehashing of the original. This is all they just reused all the same stuff, and there's a
Well,
lot of fan complaints about that.
to
And
be
then
fair, they did. I mean, how many times can you do the Death Star? How many times can you do the exact same plot points? I just
yeah, so,
I
but here,
yeah.
here's where the fan base is kooky, though, because then you have Last Jedi comes out, and it completely
uh,
throws everything on its ear and kind of throws out the playbook, and then the fans are all upset that they were too different. It was too different. It was too far. Like, no, you can't do it that way. And so it's just hilarious to kind of watch this back and forth. And the whole point that I want to make from this is like I think like yes, there may be some content that comes out that you don't like. I'm a huge Ninja Turtle fan, and I just gotta say the Michael Bay movies are largely crap. There's some fun elements in there, um, but and I still go like I'm still gonna go and see it because it's a Ninja Turtle movie. And yeah, I might not go buy that one on Blu-ray. I might not, go see it a second and third time in the theater, but I'm gonna go see it, and I'm grateful that they're still making Ninja Turtle stuff. Okay, so I
Right.
can go and I can see a new Ninja Turtle movie, and so I feel like some fan bases need to just kind of take a chill pill and accept that you have something that you follow that you enjoy, and they're still making more of it. And if it's successful, they'll keep making more. So yeah, you're not going to like everything that comes out, but they're trying something new. They're trying something different. Discovery's not for you, but I've heard that they have launched like they've got all sorts of stuff coming out. They got a new like Pike from Discovery. They're going to do a spin-off of just Captain Pike, having his own series. I'm really excited about that.
I'm excited
And
about
then
that, but my problem with them doing this is like they're shotgunning. And by that I mean they're scattergunning. And that means that they don't know what they're doing. Because They're taking things and they're trying to pluck the perfect elements from them and creating new TV shows with them. And they're going to keep on doing that until they get a successful one. That's not how you run a production company. Okay? Like, if something doesn't work, you stop and you create something new. You don't take the one thing out of something bad and try to make it good. That's just my opinion. But when it goes back to Star Wars, my thing with Star Wars is that there is so much lore out there for Star Wars. They didn't ever have to do the movies that they're doing right now. They never had to do these movies. They never had to do this whole set of modern movies in the last 6 years or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They could have easily gone, and there are two chain of movies that I wish Star Wars would do more than they ever did this set. And that is the Knights of the Old Republic. Yeah. You've got like at least 10 movies worth of information and creative information there. Do a Knights of the Old Republic movies. Do the Dark Forces movies from the Dark Forces video game franchise. Do these movies. They have better plot. It's already all written. Like, the workload is zero. Come on. Like, you already have the content. And you know that people already love it. Like you said, when you bought the Xbox original, it came in a bundle package with Knights of the Old Republic. And, like, that doesn't happen if it's not going to be big. Just saying.
Yeah. Right.
So, like, take the stuff you've got and work with it.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a ton of content there. I will say I am a fan of the new movies. You know, there are definitely, like with the trilogy itself, there are some major flaws. But again, for me, I'm happy to have more Star Wars. And you know, there's going to be some hit or miss. Like you said, it does feel like at times the modern companies are kind of doing the shotgun, like spray and pray. Let's throw a bunch of stuff out there and see what lands. The nice thing about that strategy is eventually they're going to hit some stuff that lands good with you. So
Yeah.
There's a positive there, you know. So I am glad. I do feel like fans need to kind of sit back and just again accept that you've got more content of things that you love coming out, and you know, like, it's not every day I can go to the theater and watch a Ninja Turtles movie. So when they do make one, I'm going to go see it, and it may not be my favorite thing in the world, but I get to see my favorite characters, you know, and that's really cool.
And
So
I think the hard pill for us as consumers, or the consumers of the media, to swallow is that in the end, the studios know that they're not going to make everybody happy. So there's no point in trying. And if consumers haven't figured that out by now, like, you can stop complaining. Stop complaining on Reddit. Stop complaining on IMDb and everything else. Like, it doesn't matter because they don't care anymore. And if that's not painfully obvious with Disney, like, look at anything Disney's made in the last 5 years compared to the reviews of the previous things they made. Like, if it's not painfully obvious that they don't care anymore, like, I'm sorry, you need to have your eyes checked. So we really do need to get over that mentality of thinking that everything needs to be perfect for us. I get it, it's made for us, but, like, they don't care anymore, so get over it.
well, they do care about making money, so they're going to aim for the middle. They're going to aim for the average. What do the masses want?
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're hoping to get to. You know, so super fans are not necessarily that market. You know, it's just to jump. We're going to wrap up here pretty quick, but it's like the idea. Somebody asked Tommy Tallarico on a stream or maybe on Atari Age. They said, "Hey, why don't you make like the Intellivision 3?" You know, because they had back in the day they had published. There was a promo article at least where they had done like a prototype of the Intellivision 3. It was like an upgraded, different modern looking console that would have been, you know, late 80s or so release. And somebody said, "Hey, why don't you just come out with the Intellivision 3 instead of doing the Amico? And you can do like a kind of that era of game." And Tommy had a great answer. He's like, "Because like 3,000 people would buy it." Um, because there's not that many people who
Right.
want to go and buy a console that was built for the mid to late 80s.
Yeah.
And so but that's what the hardcore gamers would love. They would love like, hey, give me that niche thing that I really, I would go buy that because I'm so hardcore.
Well, that's
And
why you have the wood grain and gold version of the Amico.
right, yeah. Anyway, we want to keep to about an hour, and I know we've gone over a little bit. So, any parting thoughts, Aaron, that you want to share?
I mean, not really. I'm just glad we got to do the stream. I told you we didn't need all those topics.
Hey, we're going to be back though, so we'll be back other nights, and we'll pop in from time to time. Where can people find you?
You can find me at Blues Tech on YouTube and Blues Tech Review on Twitter and Facebook, and that's pretty much it. Oh, and Twitch stream too. Occasionally, I'll do some retrospective on PC games as live streams. So like the original Call of Duty or some of the original Jedi Knight games and stuff. I'll go back and I'll replay them to see how they hold up.
Cool. Yeah, and I know I've got your channel linked in the description, but send me over your links after, and I'll get some of those other ones there in the description too. For you guys who came along in the chat, thanks so much for being with us. It was awesome. First time to have some people here, and great contributions. So hopefully we'll see you next time. And if you have any topics you'd like us to discuss once the video is saved, feel free to comment on there. I'll have the pin post will be what do you want to hear about in the future. So thanks so much, guys, and for being here. And thanks, Aaron, for coming on to my channel. And see you guys next time.
See you later, guys.